how are we going to attach events, and what are the ways that we can do validations using Angular, how many types of validations which are available, and some sort of digital dependency injection as well. This is the curriculum agenda for today's session. Just give me 1 minute. So we'll wait for a few more minutes and let others also join the session. Meanwhile, if you people have any other further questions, or if you have any doubts with respect to yesterday's and previous sessions, and people who have joined, kindly ask the question, then I'll try to address them. Meanwhile, let people also join the session. Today, more or less, because every dynamic application, we also keep at least one single forms. And how are we going to validate the user inputs? What if we are not validating user inputs? What are the problems that we have to experience? This is what you must have to understand today. Hemant, the class timings is 6:45 only, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
So, someone is asking, Parishi Chinni Sri Venkatasai, in general website is developed by using Angular or what? Sir, without Angular also we can develop applications by using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. But if you are using this Angular or React or Vue.js, these guys are libraries and frameworks. Angular is a popular framework. By using an Angular, you will get ready-made features. By using all these ready-made features, we'll be able to increase our development speed. We can also make our application performance. We can also reduce the complexity of an application development. We can make application code as readable code. That is where people are always giving importance to the libraries or frameworks. But even though out of multiple frameworks which are available in the market, why Angular is picking its strength? Because Google is behind Angular, and people whoever uses Angular as their front-end framework to build a single-page architecture, if any errors comes into your picture, or Angular also has a huge community. They are keep releasing a different modules as a free of cost. One of the best advantage using Angular as your front-end framework, and there are hundreds of thousands of modules are free. Those modules that we can use to build a web applications. It's not just for websites. Website is just a small word. Web applications, mobile applications, desktop applications, where we can generate a business. The application which generates a business, which is called web. Same nowadays, out of 100%, 80% of the users are accessing the web or mobile using mobile gadgets or similar kind of gadgets. So we should always build that application by using respective frameworks. Each framework will have inline with the predefined modules or predefined plugins, predefined concepts. Instead of writing a code from the scratch, if you pick up any of the good framework, the framework will help you to build an application. And because of framework features, I can say 50% of the application code can be generated by a framework. Only you must have to write remaining 50%. Guys, today, let me keep explaining about today's agenda. So what I planned for today, now We are going to explain about forms first. Let me talk about what we are planning to explain today. Today's agenda. First, we will try to explain what is forms is all about. So, since many people are already aware of what is the use of forms, but the only way the website is in a position to collect the information from a user by giving a form. However, if you people are going to a bank, or if you are going to any other place to get admission, so the administrative department, they are going to give a form. You must have to fill all your details and you must have to submit that information back to the administrative department. Those guys are going to utilize that form to take your details, and they are going to store it into their database for a further use. Similarly, if you are building a web application or a mobile application, if you are planning to collect the information from a user, make sure that you have to generate a form. Guys, if you take an example of one house, very important. If you take any house, whether it is sample house or a bigger house, whatever it is, I'm very bad at drawing, but please try to understand. So if you take an example of this house, you see here, this is the entrance of a house. Entrance. Whereas coming to see this area, there is no entrance. People can't even enter here. People can't even enter here. People can't even enter here. Now the only one possible way for a people to enter into a house is by the main entrance. This is where the wall, we have a door here, the people are going to enter. Similarly, when we are working on application, my dear friends, the only way the user is going to enter into your application by using forms. The forms are the one which allows end users to give inputs. That is where the entrance, people are entering by using the forms. Make sure when people are entering, that is where we have to put a security check here. We should put security check. Why we have to put a security check? The reason is, since people are entering into a house, you have to check whether the people are entering with the proper information, or is there any explosives are there, or are they correct users, are there maybe Maoists or terrorists, to ensure what sort of data which is entering into our application. However, what sort of people who are entering into our house, we are also checking a security check. Similarly, when we are working on a real-time application, make sure that when you are preparing the forms, you should also ensure how to do a form validation. That is very important, my dear friends. Now, forms and form validations. No matter whatever the technology that you are using, you please try to validate the form. That is where user is entering into your application. Now, if you guys are not doing a proper form validation, the end users are going to enter unwanted information back to an application. If unwanted information falls back into your page, so there will be a troubles. To avoid unwanted troubles during the execution of an application, that is where we must have to do validations. The validations also, either we can do front-end validations, we can also do back-end validations. Depends upon what nature of an application that you people are building it. If you are building a small, I mean to say, e-commerce applications, the validations, if you do it in front-end, that is sufficient enough. When you are going for banking applications, we should also do a validations even in client side as well as server side. And if you guys are meeting a normal candidate, you need not to take appointment. And normal people, if someone wanted to meet me, there is no security check. Directly you can even meet me. But when you are going to meet any of these celebrities, guys, always there will be a lot of security checks. So now let me explain how are we going to do validations. And one more thing, you should also understand, what is events is all about. The only way user is going to interact, guys, if you can see, I'm just putting one simple form, a login form, whereas coming to username and password, I'm just putting one button. Think about it. This is my page. So in this particular page, if user, this is login. This is called login button. Whereas coming to this is a password, PS. This is called as username, US. Now end users are going to access this page. The only way these end users are giving a data back to our application. Now this front-end application would have been connected. So it would have been connected to a middleware, and the middleware is connected to a database. This is a quite common architecture diagram that I used to explain. This is three-tier architecture. Now the request will go to middleware, and the middleware is sending a request back to a database, and database is going to give a data back to middleware, and middleware is displaying the data into frontend. Now this is one tier, which is called as presentation layer. This is called as application layer, which is known as database layer. Now forget about these two interactions, how these two systems are interacting. That is none of our front-end developer duty. That is a back-end developer duty. Okay, see, for every application, since Anil Kumar is requesting to explain about the folder structure. Hey, Anil, I'll try to explain little later. Let me plan for today's agenda. Then I'll come back again. I'll try to explain about the flow. So please wait for some time. I'll definitely address your query. Okay. Next, what I'm trying to explain here. See, these guys are the business users, my dear friends. For them, only presentation layer matters a lot. However, if you're presenting beautifully, these people will be happy and they are keep coming to your web page. If this particular presentation layer is not good, end users are not going to access your web page. They will just that's why out of all these three layers, application layer, database layer, and presentation layer, we should focus more on presentation layer. The presentation layer has to execute as fast as possible because the business users are directly accessing this presentation layer. Make sense? Now to build this, that is where people are using frameworks, popular frameworks or popular libraries. Now we picked up Angular since it is so popular in the market. Now guys, listen carefully. And how to design a form. First of all, you guys have to understand how to design a form. First and prerequisites to create a form. A person must have a knowledge on HTML. HTML is for designing a page. Then a person should also knowledge on CSS. A person should also have a knowledge on and JavaScript. These are the prerequisites in order to learn these form validations and forms events. And person should also have a knowledge on Bootstrap. These three information is mandatory, my dear friends. That is where I already explained about all these four concepts. Now HTML is for designing a page. CSS is for styling a page. JavaScript is for interactions. Bootstrap is for responsive web design. Bootstrap is for responsive web design. Now, by all these guys, we have to put it together inside our component. This is called, in Angular, we are going to make all of them inside a component. A component is a building block of an application. Building block of an application. I hope you people are understanding how we have to put it. Okay, now once the form is beautifully designed, just a second, just give me 1 minute. Okay, so we should also do validations to ensure the user is giving a proper input or not. We should also do the validations. Then, in order to allow these business users to interact with the web elements, now we should also know how are you going to bind the events back to the web elements. This is what you people have to understand, my dear friends. Now, I have created a couple of examples for explaining how many ways that we can do form validations in Angular. Now, in Angular, there are two ways that we can do form validations. Angular form validation techniques. If you guys are good at JavaScript, I think you might have already executed some sort of examples to understand how are we going to do validations in JavaScript. And in case if you are not good at JavaScript form validation, then please go through my session and understand how are we going to do the JavaScript validation. So now the importance of doing form validation to ensure that information is properly coming from a user. Okay, now let us keep Angular form validation here. One is the template driven, using completely template driven form validation is there. Template driven form validation. Second one is reactive form validation. Reactive form validation. Now in template driven, we are using HTML5 form validation rules. In HTML5 form validation rules we are using in template driven. Whereas coming to reactive form validation, purely we are writing all the logic inside a component. Okay, all the logic we are writing inside a component. Now there is no HTML5 validations that we are reusing it. Guys, that is up to your project requirement. Whether you want to implement some sort of validations using template driven, and HTML5 validations also has a limitations. According to your project requirements, if the validations with respect to HTML5 is sufficient enough for that task, better to go for a template driven, or You should also go for a reactive form validation. Okay, now, first of all, guys, listen carefully. As I already said, prerequisites. We need a bootstrap, guys. To create this form, we need any responsive web design framework. Why? Because if you are not using any responsive web design framework, what happens? You have to keep writing the code from the scratch. Out of many frameworks which are available in the market, you see Bootstrap plays very important role. Bootstrap is built by Twitter. There are a group of developers who works in Twitter. They just build this responsive web design framework. And what is responsive web design? I'll also explain. Since it is coming in the picture, you see here, when you are building your web page, even that should work very well. The design should not distract. For a desktop, if you think that this is desktop or desktop, for desktop also it should work well. And even if you go for a tablet, if you think that this is tab, for tab also it should work well. Even if you go for this is a mobile, for mobile devices also the code, the design should not distract. And even if you are going for bigger screens, the wider screens more than a TV, even this is wider screens. For all these screens also, the code should be in a position, the design should be in a position to work well. So if the same one single code is going to behave and it is going to work well in all other available gadgets in the market, which is called responsive web design. To achieve your page, to make it responsive web design, that is where we are going to use RWD framework, that is Bootstrap. So the tagline of Bootstrap, if you say, which is a mobile first front-end framework, which released by Twitter Bootstrap. That's why people used to say Bootstrap. Some people used to call Bootstrap also Twitter Bootstrap. Since the group of employees who works for Twitter, they have built this responsive framework. And the Bootstrap, which is already there inside Angular module, the key about Bootstrap is completely different than this Twitter Bootstrap. Now, this Bootstrap framework you should also install. To install this Bootstrap, you have to run command npm followed by install install. Either you can go for a shortcut or you can also use command install followed by Bootstrap package name. Here you have to use Bootstrap version. So this particular command is going to connect to the internet, the official website of Bootstrap, which will try to download the latest version of a Bootstrap into your application. Guys, listen carefully. Now I'm just planning to execute. If I'm keep moving ahead to my web page, now you see here the template-driven form validation. There is no way to save this. Oh God, the save option is not coming. Hey Himamant, why I am not able to save my drawings? Why save option is disabled here? Is there any idea?
No, sir.
Because I can't even save this drawing. If I clear this again, I must start, keep it.
I don't have idea on this, sir.
Okay, no issues. Let me do one thing, guys. I just need this drawing. I'm using snipping tool. Let me snip this. So if you guys are technically strong, if one option is not there, oh my God. Let me go for print screen. Now this snipping tool is not helping. which is creating a problem. So now I just print a screen. Let me go for paint. Now I saved it. Let me save this. I'm saving into my application. This is nowhere related to Angular. Please try to follow me what I am doing. So the documents, ExcelR, Angular app, ExcelR app. So here I'll try to create separate folder, classroom, board, classroom boards, classroom boards. Here I'll try to save this one as form validation. So I'm saving this one as PNG. That's fine. Now let me open that into any of this editor guys. Yes. Now this will be useful for you. Now you guys have to install Bootstrap into your application. So what I'm going to do, I'll try to install that Bootstrap. Since Bootstrap I have not installed, my web page, even this page is not looking so great. That's why instead of writing a code from the scratch, I thought of using ready-made mobile first framework, which is Bootstrap. To use that, I must have to install Bootstrap into my application. To install, so see npm, I'm running a command, npm install space Bootstrap. You need not to specify, because if you're not specifying the version, it will try to install the latest version. Now let me install latest version into my application. Guys, you should also have an active internet connection when you are performing any npm commands. Why? Because npm always connect to their official websites, whatever the package that you guys are planning to download, and it will try to put it inside the node modules of your project. So which won't even, it will download and it will save it in your node modules. Again, a developer duty is to import that particular package and make use of it. Now you see line number, say here, Bootstrap 4.6.0. This is a latest stable version. This version which is downloaded, npm is a package manager which downloaded. And now you have to make an entry. This you guys have to import this package into your application. How are we going to import Bootstrap into your Angular application right after downloading? That is what next question. Now guys, listen carefully. All the configurations with respect to your external CSS and external JavaScript, you should go to Angular JSON file. In that, under your project, whatever the name that you have given under your project, this is a configurations with respect to your Angular application. So under your projects, ExcelR app, this is your project name. Under this, you can even see that there is a assets, there is a styles, there is a scripts. Now guys, listen, I would like to make Bootstrap. I wanted to use Bootstrap. There are multiple ways that we can load. This is the best way to load a Bootstrap. Now see, within these styles, I must have to load Bootstrap. I have to give a path. Now you see here, inside the node modules, my Bootstrap is there. Now current directory, single dot forward slash represents current directory. Then in the current directory, node underscore modules, which identifies the node modules slash. So Bootstrap is a folder slash, because I know that is where if you go to node modules, check for Bootstrap. So Bootstrap, and under Bootstrap, this is a separate distribution folder. Inside distribution folder, again subfolder CSS. Now, under Bootstrap, distribution, this is a subfolder. Then Bootstrap min.css. This is the minified version that you guys have to load always. Forget about all other files. Only minified version of Bootstrap then you have to load. Similarly, you should also load Bootstrap related JavaScript files, but I don't want to use Bootstrap JavaScript related operations anyhow. I'm just using Bootstrap CSS. Let us stop here, and tomorrow, in case if you are planning to use any of these JavaScript components with respect to your Bootstrap, then the Bootstrap JS also we have to load under scripts. And Bootstrap JS is literally depending on jQuery and popper.js. When you are planning to load Bootstrap JS, first you must have to load dependencies, because Bootstrap JS is depending on jQuery and popper.js. That we'll try to explain when the situation demands. I'm going to explain later. Now, on successful installation of Bootstrap and successfully if you are adding it to your project. Now guys, here one more important note that you must have to remember. The moment when you guys are installing, and if you make an entry in Angular, if you are making any changes in Angular outside of SRC folder, if you make any changes, make sure that you must have to recompile your application again. Since if you make a changes within a SRC folder, automatic compilation happens. Since your changes you have registered outside of SRC folder, that is where go back to your application wherever it is running, and I think this is one of the command prompt you are running. Try to stop this. Control C if you type, which is asking terminate a current batch. You try to put S, which will terminate a current batch. Then you must have to keep recompiling again, ng-serv-o, which will recompile again. This initially, when you guys are getting familiarity with Angular, you may be experiencing some sort of problems. And why? Because you will make a changes outside of SRC, and you will expect that changes to reflect into your web page. Those changes will not reflect. To avoid unwanted confusions, and whatever the changes that you registered outside of SRC, kindly recompile again, so that the changes, the webpack is gonna be taking those changes and it will try to recompile from the scratch again. Now there is an error. So let me check what is the error. So node modules cannot resolve. There is some error. ExcelR app. What is the error? Let me check. SRC style.css node modules. I think somewhere we are missing comma, I guess. Let me go back. I think node modules styles. Under node modules, Bootstrap, dist, inside a dist, CSS folder, CSS slash, that is very important. Dist CSS. Since I have given a wrong path, the issues are coming. Again, you have to stop the batch, rerun again. Since I changed I modified outside of SRC folder. So you should also have a patience when you are working on IT company, but not only in IT, everywhere. If you wanted to lead a good life, you should have a patience. Nothing is possible to achieve overnight. Even the Rom city, the beautiful city, is also built in multiple years. Taj Mahal also not built within a day. Similarly, if you want to become an expertise developer, you should also put efforts on daily basis. Most of the cases, young generation like you people, so you are not ready to put efforts and you want to become an expert. And you wanted to get a lakhs of rupees as a salaries, but you don't need to put the efforts to understand the technologies. But I'm sure that is not possible. Reality is different and real is different, my dear friends. Okay, something is missing, I guess. because of some sort of CSS issues, you can even see that the menus are disappears. Now inspect what is happening and let me verify it. What I happened about my menus. Image is there, navigation. Now navigation menus are also there, but only I think there is a text. So now LIA, you can see that the color of navigation, it becomes white. That is where also we must have to check. White is fine. Then why these guys are not displaying? List style none and anchor tag. Font size. Somewhere it is displaying here. The Bootstrap started giving a problem. Now you guys have to identify, since you have added a framework, guys, every time, and one more, see, this particular problem is also teaching us a lesson. What is a lesson? See, when you are planning to build an application, all the prerequisites that we have to capture at initially. So when you construct a first floor and when you are going to a second floor, again, if you make a changes in a basement, that is where this kind of problems comes into the picture. Now I introduce this framework. Instead of introducing in the beginning of my application, I introduce this framework in the middle. That is where the framework is not even helping us. Again, I must have to identify it. That's why, my dear friends, and before taking a decision, you do have 100 options. Once you take the decisions, there is no option for you to step back. Now you see, since this framework, if I would have already integrated in the beginning of my application today, I don't need to face this kind of problems. Now that is fine. Anyhow, I'm experiencing some sort of problems with respect to Bootstrap, and let me identify what is the problems, guys. Now inside src index.html. Now go back to your header component. So header division now do here. So now I would like to check what happened to my UI. So go back to the header component inside first division. Flex 1. The flex 1 is not working as expected. If this is not working as expected, now the header specific CSS, I'm going to put it inside my header. Now I'm selecting a header. I'm making my parent element as flexible element. Display flex. See now, since I made couple of changes, you see here my menu is also coming now. And so I made display and the division and navigation links. These guys are becoming inline elements, and I have used a concept called layout. That is fine. Nowhere we haven't used any form validations using Angular. Still, we are in a process of designing our form. Guys, once the design is ready, then only we will be able to apply form validation techniques using Angular. Next, my dear friends, you come back, and if you go to the contact page, you can even see that the validation, all the Bootstrap classes that we have used. That is how earlier, before Bootstrap, the page it was displaying in a different way. After adding Bootstrap into your application, the way how the design is coming, that is completely different. Now you see here, and this is a form which I have created. I would like to do, this is where user is going to enter his information for a website administrator. So if he is entering information, you have to ensure, you in the sense, The front-end developers has to ensure the information which is given by a developers are right information or wrong information. That is what we must have to check. Now listen carefully. On click of register, now you see that I have already written our validation rules. Now until unless if user is not entering this information properly, if he is not selecting what is the title, and as long as if user started entering a first name also, you see here the errors are disappearing. Similarly, if he enters last name, is also errors are disappearing. Date of birth, if you start a date, so now date of birth must be valid date, that is YMD format, Y by MD format which is given. So now let me see here 1985. So the invalid information that you people are giving. So this particular form I just created, before the class, guys. Why? Because if I start creating this form within the class, it will try to take a lot of time. Since you guys are already familiar with HTML forms and Bootstrap forms, I have already created earlier. Now concentrate more on how are we going to add a logic, business logic with respect to Angular. That is what you must have to understand. Because HTML, CSS, I'll make it ready, and the logic, see, if you are keep writing a single line of code, every line of a code, it will try to take at least 4 or 5 months to complete entire course. Since it is a crash course, you guys want to understand the important logic. Say similarly, you see here email. So email we should also validate properly. When user enters the email, we should also ensure the email is a proper format or not. If he is entering wrong format of an email, and we should also give an error message. Now you see I'm just giving a wrong format of email. Just Murli @ Now this is how HTML5 validations will accept. Right after @ if you give some characters, it will accept it. Generally, if without a .com or a domain name, we should not even consider that is a valid email. So that story is different. Now let me type my email, agnalmurli22@gmail.com. This is my email. Okay. Now when we are giving a wrong email, for example, if you give wrong email, so what happens? Now you see email must be a valid email. This all the validation rules that I have controlled by using HTML5. Now password, let me give some sort of password. I'm just giving some password, and confirm password also I'm just giving. Yes, madam. For Nikita, in order to make a design related activities in a website, responsive web design, or if you wanted to avoid this HTML and CSS writing, if you want to ready-made HTML, CSS, Bootstrap plays very important role. Okay, now see, Angular and JavaScript comes into your picture only when if you are planning to add functionality back to your web page. If you don't want to create a dynamic application, I don't think this Angular is suitable for static applications. Angular is best suitable for dynamic, that to single page applications. Now you see here, in case if the confirm password, if I'm not entering, now immediately confirm password error message also it is displaying. The moment when you start entering any one single character, confirm password will also error message is disappear. Now on click of register, you see that whatever the information that you have typed already in your web page, that information is displaying here. You can see the title, whatever you have given, first name, last name, date of birth, email, password, confirm password. Guys, so every information. So in case if you are not using Angular, then to do a validation using JavaScript, you must have to write too many lines of code. To avoid unwanted lines of code, to improve the website, web development speed, to speed up the development. Why? Because nowadays every client is expecting development company to complete the task as quickly as possible. Okay, so since you are not going for any responsive frameworks or advanced libraries or frameworks to build an application, if you are using core technologies, 3 months project you have to increase 6 months, at least 6-7 months you will take. To reduce the time span, we have to rely on this latest frameworks and libraries. Okay, fine. Now, theoretically, I just explained. Now, let me go back to your code. I have created one component. Yesterday, contact component we have already created. Let me open that contact component, my dear friends. So, guys, one best practice I'll tell you, when you are working on any project, kindly close unwanted files. So you try to close all others. Only whatever the folder that you wanted to work, try to open that folder alone. Why? Because even if many people used to do, if you see, if your desktop is not organized properly, maybe if you are using a laptop or a desktop, if your room is not organized properly, even if your computer is not organized properly, but you guys are not a good developers, I guess. Now, guys, the way how you are organizing the code, the way how you are organizing your task, how you are organizing your house, it depends. It will definitely let people know whether you are a organized good guy or a bad guy. Literally, see, if many people I have seen, many of the developers, they used to keep saving all the folders into your desktop. Their desktop looks ugly, and those guys have to suffer a lot of problems. Why? Because if the data is not organized properly in a computer, the retrieval will become tough. Similarly, that is called design patterns. You must have to use the proper design patterns when you are working on live applications. Those design patterns will make developer life clean and neat. And so, and someone is asking HTML5 validation supported by all the browsers. Yes, it is supported by all the browsers. And why this is my recommended, sir? I don't know what is this recommended. Is it possible to create a mobile application in Angular? Yes, of course. Angular, now mobile applications can also be possible by creating Angular. Angular is one part bus. Using Angular alone, it is not possible for you to create a whole mobile application. For a mobile front-end, we can use Angular. Ionic is one of the framework that Ionic uses Angular for front-end part of the application. Next, let me come back to a contact component. Listen carefully. Here, I created contact component. Inside a contact component, you see here all Bootstrap, component, Bootstrap form I have created. Now the classes, if you look after this, though my contact component CSS is not even created, and we have already created all the classes, these predefined classes, which we picked up from Bootstrap. Now, once the form is created, then guys, it is very important to understand. Now you see here the events. Now I am explaining how to attach an event back to your HTML elements. So you should know, yesterday if you guys have attended my session, I explained how are you going to bind the event. So under data binding category, event binding I explained. And we have to use a function brackets followed by ng. Ng is a prefix and followed by event. Either ng and event name you can also use, or directly event name also you can use it. Now here line number 5, the moment when the form is submitted, ng submit is also one of the event. And one more thing, if you try to see, we have used template variables. Since it is a template driven form validation, to identify each element which is there inside a template, we have to create a template variables. How are you going to create a template variables? And by using hash followed by a template variable name. Wherever you see hash followed by something which is called template variables, those guys are helping us to understand or identify what is that element. Now every form element, to identify that, we have to create a template variables. That is how it is very important point to note here. When you are doing a form validation using template, every element within form or a form element also be addressed by template variable. Now, how can you identify template variables? And within the element, wherever you see as followed by some name, that is called template variable. To identify a form, you see here, we have created as f. F is a template variable name, and ng form. This is a predefined value for this form template variable. Next, that template variable f dot form, if it is invalid or valid. So the form should be submitted only if all the input elements are valid. That is what this check is all about. Guys, I am going to a form and I am just checking all the input elements are valid. If it is not valid, the form won't even submit. If it is valid, then only form will be submitted. Now on submit is an event. This is a method which is created behind the scenes inside my component controller, that is a TS file. You can see that on submit. This is one of the file which I have created to check whether the form is submitting or not. I will try to explain about this little later, my dear friends. Now you see here when you guys are doing a form validation, automatically Angular takes care about the validations, and few classes would have been added into your form elements. Those classes are ng untouched, ng pristine, ng touched, ng invalid. All these kind of few classes with respect to your form validation, which is going to added by Angular. Now you please try to understand. Now the moment when you guys are reloading this component, I'll also check. Now so far the user is not visited any of the fields. The fields are empty. I mean to say fresh fields. Now go and inspect this fields, guys. You will get to know how Angular is taking a control. Now if you go back to that particular division, now select. You can even see that for a select element, it has ng untouched. This is one of the class. Ng pristine, ng invalid. You can also find out these three classes would have been added behind the scenes by Angular. That is what advantage of going for a framework. Now, if you wanted to check, go back to your page and ensure whether these three classes you have added or not. You will try to check. I'm going back. Now here I have a select with options. I'm formatting the document. Now if you come back, see my dear friends. Now only one class is there. If you look after this line number 9, my select element has only form control. Though I haven't added other element, form controller class was there, but still ng untouched, ng pristine, ng invalid. Who has added this? This has been added by Angular during the execution of a component into the DOM. That is where the 50, not even 50, when it comes to form validations, almost 80% of the logic that you can copy paste from Angular, 20% only you have to execute. Okay, next what I'm planning to explain here. First, the moment you see here untouched, since the field is untouched, now I'm going to touch that field. Now you see here, once the value is changing, now untouched is still there, and one more, the pristine becomes ng dirty. Now earlier you could see pristine class, now pristine class is overridden with ng dirty. Dirty class, that dirty class is valid. Also parallelly invalid will become valid. Why? Because so there is a rule. So what was the rule that we have attached here? If we come back, so guys listen carefully. The required, this is HTML5 validation attribute. Required attribute will make that particular element as mandatory element. Now here, how are you going to do a template validation. These two attributes are very, very, very important. These two attributes are very important. Now here, this is called two-way data binding. Now ng model achieves two-way data binding, and as title is the one which I already said, for every element to identify inside our template, you have to define the template variable. Now that template variable, you have to assign the value is ng model, which is a predefined value. So now what happens, this template variable is assigning back to my model object. This model object which I have created in my component controller. You see here, line number 9, I created my model object with the empty value. Every bits and pieces that, no, because it is interdependent. If you make anywhere wrong code, and which is not going to work as expected. That is why make sure when you are working, and also wait for some time. The people are keep asking unwanted other questions. Wait for some time. We'll try to address other questions. Since we are in one flow, we must have to complete this flow. Focus more on forms and form validations and event binding today. So then, if you have any other questions, why? Because in one session, if you are keep asking other session questions, what happens? It will be tough for you to understand that question. Hope you understand, my dear friends. Now, here, how are we going to see the moment when user clicks on submit, which is going to, as title is a template variable name of this field. And since we are adding it for ng model, the model.title. Now, this title and the template variable title must be matched. It should match. Now, if you are giving such kind of relationship, what happens? As long as if user started making changes inside a view, automatically it will try to notify to your controller. That is what yesterday we explained by taking one simple example. How did we achieve two-way data binding by using ng model? Now, model object we have created, and also, my dear friends, see here, model object.title. So, in case if I make changes, listen carefully. So here, within my constructor, this dot model dot title is equal to, if I try to give mr, Mr. Now this is a default value which I am setting. Go back. Since I made a changes within my controller, now you can also see that those guys are going to reflect into your view. See, by automatically the Mr. came into picture. Now the same way, first name. Listen carefully. The first name. What is the first name field here? Model.first name. If the first name also, if I am setting here, if I am constructing my first name property as well, is equal to default values if I am setting. Now that default values will reflect into your view as well. This is called two-way data binding. See, Murli is also printing. Now, what did you understand about this particular lines? Now, if you make a changes inside your controller, this is component. Here, this is component class. If you make a changes in a component class, the view is also getting notified. If you make a changes inside a view, the model object which is there in component will also get notified. That can be achievable. I don't want, so just give me 1 minute. I don't want these two lines. Why? Because the default values I don't want to display. I would like to collect it from a user. So for you people to understand how two-way data binding will work, I just explained about it. Hope you people are following me. Okay, next, this is very important. ng model and model.firstName, and as first name is equal to ng model. So this is how we are setting the relationship between that template variable and model object. Next, if you wanted to display the error classes, my dear friends, to display the error classes, to make your error, that input element highlighted with a red border, that can be handled by ng class, which is also predefined directives. And I'm also explaining the basics of directives also, guys. Directives are going to allow developer to add a business logic or existing logic if you wanted to add it for a template, that is where this directives comes into your picture. These directives also categorized into three different ways. One is structural directives and behavior directives and custom directives. So we do have a separate session in the next class. I'll try to explain about how are you going to do, how are we going to use predefined directives, and how are we going to create a custom defined directives also. I'll explain in the next session. ng class. Okay, so now ng class, this is changing the behavior of an element. It is not going to change a structure. Since it is changing the behavior of an element, which is under behavior category, behavior directive. Now is invalid. Now is invalid if the form f is nothing but a form template variable. If it is submitted and first name is invalid, if the form is submitted and the first name is invalid, then the error class is going to use invalid. It will become true. If it is invalid is true, then behind the scenes Angular is going to add dirty class and invalid class back to this element. If invalid class is there, automatically Angular will add a error border to that particular element. To avoid this, guys, that is where behind the scenes this ng, the form also you see here, form has ng untouched, ng pristine, ng invalid. Within your form, if any one field is invalid, the whole form invalid class will be there. If all the form elements are valid, then only the form class will turn to valid. If the form has valid, then only form will be submitted. Until that, even if any one field, if you are keep clicking also, the form is not submitting. Even let me fill only one field I filled it, click on register, it is not happening. The reason is, that is how we have written a logic. Why? Because we should not even enable this register button if the form has any element invalid. Hope you people are understanding. Now it is very simple technique. Don't even afraid. Very simple technique is to add a logic. These three attributes which are very important. To add a error message, error border, we have to use ng class directive, and to add a logic, I mean to say, to add your form element into a model object. This is how ng model and model dot template variable name, and the template variable that you have to assign ng model. ng model is a default value for a template variable. Why? Because this ng model directive is taking this template variable name and it is attaching back to your model object. In that way, whatever the values that is entered by a user, which is going to guys, once the course gets completed and we are going to put all of them into a trial. So why? Because since it is under construction, if I try to put all this code, I think you will be facing issues, and wait for some time. I'll try to give you this code. Or you can also write a mail to ExcelR. ExcelR people will allow you to they will also help you how to get this source code. Next, my dear friends, now you see here the error messages. So making error border that can be taken care by this ng class. Making error border that can be taken care by ng class. Whereas coming to the displaying the error messages will be taken care by like this. Now, I see here we are also using one more predefined directive. ng class is also directive, that is a behavior directive. Wherever you see star followed by ng and directive name if or ng for. Star, if you see, those directives are called structural directives. Structural directives in Angular will allow developer to modify or update or change the structure of your DOM elements. That is where, if you are planning to add or remove elements into your DOM, go for a structural directives. If you are planning to change the behavior of elements, go for a behavior directives. ng class, ng style. This two comes under behavior directives. ng for, ng show, ng hide, ng if. All these guys comes under structural directives. I'll also give you the list in case if you wanted to go back to your documentation. I think the official website angular.org is a very good website where we have respective updated information. Guys, even if you go for other resources, we do have information, but we never know whether it is updated or not updated. If you want all the updated information with respect to any of the language, their official website is the best source of updated information. I hope you make sense. Now you see line number 23. Line number 23, let me explain about this line number 23 to display the error messages. Now ngif, this is ngif is a structural directory. Now f is a, what is this? This is called as form template variable. This is form template variable. If you go back to your form, then you will be able to see -f we have already given template variable. As I already said, template variables will allow developer to select the elements which are there inside a template. Next, submitted. So f dot submitted. If the form gets submitted and logically and we are using is operator. First name. This is a template. This is also again. This is a element, form element template variable. To identify this element, we are using element template variable. I hope you people are familiar with what is the importance of going for a template variables. Now invalid, this is also a property. If the form has invalid, then which invalid, whether it is a required invalid rule or what sort of invalid rule which is. Now first name dot errors, under errors, whether it is a required error or min length or max length, and I'm also going to add one more rule. I'll try to explain in case if you are planning to add multiple rules, how are we going to validate it. Okay guys, now as long as if the required rule is matching, the first name is required, this error message is going to display. And one more thing, kindly carefully observe, and I'm going to check minimum min length also. However, required is one of the attribute in HTML5 to do required validation. Parallelly, I'm also giving min length. Min length I'm giving at least 6 characters. First name I'm expecting 6 characters. Now guys, listen carefully. If the minimum length is not 6 characters, I wanted to display the error message. To do that, again I'm writing one more line to display the one more condition, error message. Now first name dot errors min length. Now min length, what is the min length that we have given? Minimum length. If min length is not meeting the criteria, then here instead of giving this first name is required, first name should be minimum of 6 characters. Like that, similar error messages also we have to display. Now go back and try to check. If any errors are there, it won't even work. Now let me see. Now first required only it is working. Now required by giving a value, and the moment when you start entering, you see here first name should be minimum of 6 characters. The second rule is also executing. Okay, first name should be minimum of 6 characters. Now that is, see, when we are giving lesser than 6 characters, till that 6 character, the rule is executing. If you wanted to restrict maximum, the maximum can also be possible, my dear friends. That is how. Make sure it is always very important for you to understand how to write a different sort of rules inside a template. Now, template-driven form validation, way of executing is different than reactive form validations. Now, it is very important. I am explaining about how to do validations using both the ways, and you please try to follow my session. So if you miss any one of the concepts, then it will be tough to understand the flow. That's why sincere advice for you to understand. So next, what I can say, I did validations according to my requirements. If you wanted to add, different kind of other validation rules, that is also possible. Okay. Now, official website, some people are asking about the documentation. If you go to the Angular official website, angular.io. So here you can go to Angular official website, and if you wanted to more, so go back to your documents, docs. Now see here Angular tutorial. Now here building a template driven form. So this is the one of the source. Guys, listen carefully. We should also follow the documentation. This is one of the source that I have used in order to prepare. Prerequisites, TypeScript and HTML5 programming, and Angular concepts and Angular template syntax. So this is the prerequisites. Now I also used ng model for two-way data binding, and ng form directive creates a top level form group, and you try to go through that the same. So they have used a different form, and I have created according to my requirements. And name fields. So this is, they just, they have given by taking one example, and also live example also they have given in Stack Bridge. Angular does live example under Stack Bridge, and you can even follow their documentation if you wanted to understand. Now, whatever the concept that they have used, similar kind of concept that I also used, but I have customized according to my project requirements. And sometimes, version to version, some sort of syntaxes are going to change. If the syntaxes are, not working, then try to, check the right documentation. And if you go to the official site, and the version also matters a lot. Now, which version these fellows have used, and that also matters a lot, my dear friends. Getting started. Developer guides, understanding Angular. So these are the main components, templates, directives, dependency injection. These are the main concepts that you people have to understand. Now I am going to explain about all these 4 concepts in this today's session. Now let me come back. So here I have written all the template related validation rules within a template itself. I have, if you go to my component logic, nothing. So I have not even taken care about all this template validations within my component. Everything is validated within my component HTML. Since all the conditions that we have written inside my component HTML, that is where inside a template, since you have written all the rules, which is called as template driven. The template driven validation uses HTML5 validation rules, the min length. The pattern also you can even see, for example, if I am giving a pattern. So let me go for a pattern. I'm just giving pattern. Here I'm just, let me give capital A to Z. And also give plus. I'll just give plus, which means that multiple, singular, multiple occurrences, and capital A to Z. I for dash Z. So only capital letters. The first name I'm expecting capital letters. Let me see. I have given one pattern. I'm going to check whether. So now validation required field is working, my dear friends. Now when you are going for Mr. and if I give a small letters, the minimum 6 characters is fine. Now still, which is giving an error. You see here the 6 character. The second rule is already, this particular input element met the second rule, but still it is giving error. Why? Because the pattern is already there. What is the pattern? That you have to give a capital letters, my dear friends. Since that pattern, error message that you are not captured here, that is where still it is displaying the Now for displaying a pattern related error message, again one more division that we have to generate. Here we have to write star structural directory that you have to use. If is equal to in the first name field. First name is a template variable. To identify that first name, I have given template variable name as first name. Dot what sort of errors? Errors. In that errors, a pattern. This is a pattern error. Since it is a pattern error, I can say first name should be given as capital case, capital letters. Capital should be given as capital case or capital letters. This is how you can even keep writing a different rules. Now go back, Mr. And for example here, let me submit it. First name should be minimum of 6 characters. First name should be given capital letters. Now if I am going for 6 characters, that is executed, and the third rule, which is capital letter rule, is executed. You see here, MURALI. Now capital letters is gone. Hope someone is asked about is pattern is possible. Regular expression, Satyasri. Can I give regular expression for a field in Angular? I hope you got an answer. And I am happy if you people are keep asking me questions. A good student always has to ask a question. That is why, guys, I am a big follower of Abdul Kalam sir. So Abdul Kalam sir, he used to give a suggestions to the students. Keep asking the question. If you are active in a session, you will be able to ask a lot of questions. Why? Because the people who are not asking a question, that means you are not active. You might be active in other area. Kindly utilize the session, boss. Time is so precious. And also, if you guys, someone is asking about, do you know VPN hosting? Guys, I know 45 technologies. I am very good at, 6 phases in software development lifecycle. And I came from MCA background, BSc Computers and MCA. I know designing, I know development, I know testing. I also know deployment by using DevOps and AWS, Microsoft Azure pipelines. And I'm also familiar with, multiple other technologies. That is where ExcelR has, chosen me as a trainer. Since ExcelR has, given a lot of importance to you people, that is where they are hiring expertise trainers. In ExcelR, everybody are experts. Most of the trainers are having industry experience more than 10 years. Some of them are having 22 years as well. So kindly utilize the time. That is fine. Next, see, hope you know how are you going to keep writing a different sort of rules as well. Ng if title dot error dot required. Here I am getting error. How to get over that? Can you please post that error, Mr. Srivansi, so that I'll try to see that error and I can even give you what sort of error that you are getting. Now ng class directive, let me explain ng class directive. Guys, listen. This ng class, if you are not having this ng class, if you delete this ng class, Control X, let me delete this ng class. If I am deleting it, what happens, even though there is a errors, on click, you see here, other fields are highlighting with a red border. Now, these error messages are not displaying at all. Why? Because error class is deleted. So to display the error messages and error classes, the ng class plays very important role. So that can be taken care by using predefined ng class directive that you have to put it inside the square brackets. Then within the double quotations, and you have to open a flower bracket. Is invalid. If the template variable of a form is f dot submitted, if the form is submitted and the template variable of your field first name is invalid, let us start adding the classes. If the Angular element has pristine or invalid or any dirty classes, That is where the template, is being added with the error classes and error border. That is why to display the error classes, make sure that this ng class directive is there for your field. That is where Angular is helping you to add error messages and error, border to an element. Hope you understand. Similarly, I also added some validation rules for last name, date of birth, email, password, and confirm password. We'll try to give this complete project for all of you. Try to execute this in your local computer and understand what sort of logics that we have written. Object is possibly null. So, guys, see, if you are giving like this, I can't even, give a solution, and I must have to see your code. Somewhere if you are missing, see ng, if I could see title is a template variable. Now you have written all the possible code, or if you are making anywhere mistakes, then your form validation won't even work as expected. That is why I would like to check your complete code. Now error handling in Angular, it is very important. You should also have a lot of patience, guys. Now if you make any small mistake, Angular will give you bigger error. So by looking at error, people will be panic enough, and they will try to think that, oh, Angular is tough. Angular or React or any other advanced frameworks and libraries are always easy if you have a prior experience in some development at least. If you don't have a prior experience, try to understand HTML, CSS, JavaScript thoroughly, then it will be easier for you to understand. And one more important point here, if you wanted to earn a good amount of salaries, then try to become a developer. That too, front-end developers have a lot of opportunities even in India and abroad. And also front-end developers can get a freelancing projects as well. If you are there in backend or database, you can't even get a freelancing projects. Guys, as a fresher, if you get 30,000-40,000 rupees salary is also okay. When you are going right after a marriage, you also need a secondary income. Now, if you guys are relying on first income, I'm sure if this kind of pandemic comes, if your primary source of income got damages, if you don't have a secondary source, I'm sure it will be tough for you to lead your life, and everybody has to face a problem. Today, guys, even in this pandemic, a front-end developers like me, we are surviving, and we are not even losing any salary. Why? Because we do have multiple ways of earning a amount, and we are working as a technical architect, and we are also working as a freelance part-time trainers, and we are also doing freelancing jobs. Primary income, secondary income, leverage income. There are multiple ways that we are getting income. Guys, it's very simple. Those who are from agriculture background think that you are, you have a field. In that field, think that, okay, one borewell is there. If the borewell is not working, the field is going to, you are going to lose the field. Whatever the paddy farms that you have, established, that is going to lose. Why? Because you are depending on one borewell. If you have an alternative borewell, if one borewell fails, and you can even make use of another one. That's why my sincere advice for all of you guys, if you wanted to make your life more beautiful and your job must be secure, try to stick with the development. That too, front-end development will have a lot of scope in India as well as abroad. My students are working on US and UK and Canada as well. That's okay. Is it possible to show success with a green color border if it is correct using ng class? Now, see, error messages are important for us to display. What is the point of going for a success message? Success, anyhow, if the error messages are not there, blindly the people able to understand success. For that, no need to make it green. That you have to customize if you wanted to go. But ng class is not possible to show that green color. That you have to customize it. Since it is logically incorrect, that is where Angular is not even giving that option for us. Wipe out surround. And don't even reinvent the wheel. Try to go in a possible direction. So the logics also, we must have to implement the valid logics. We don't need to put our efforts and our brain for implementing the invalid logics. That's why people used to say, guys, as a student or a developer or a human being, there are three rules. Even my HOD during my college days, my HOD used to keep explaining about three proverbs. If you rest, you will be rest. And you act, but don't overact. Learn, don't overlearn. These are the three proverbs that my HOD keep on informing to the students. Even as a student, we should also become a lifelong student. Don't even say that during the college, right after a college, and people will be feel happy, yes, saying that there is no examinations. Yes, of course you are happy because there is no examinations, but actual story, actual chapter is going to start after your college only. Now every day you must have to learn. Why? Because the versions are keep updating. As long as the technology is updating, our mindset should also be in such a way that we should ready to take the latest updates. Okay, any questions so far? Feel free to ask, or else I'll just move on to the reactive form validation. Now the template form validation, I executed for two fields, and I also written for other fields. Feel free to check about this, guys. I'll try to share this code to you guys, possibly by Friday. If you have any questions in template driven, feel free to ask R, or I'll move on. I'll just give you 4 minutes of time for you people. Feel free to ask the questions. If you don't have any questions, I'll move on to React form validation. Meanwhile, I'll also separate out my footer. Let me go for a footer component. And I'm writing footer also. I'll try to make it footer. I'm selecting a footer element. I'll make this footer element as display flex. That all the divisions who are inside footer, they will come in single line. Yes. Hey Hemant, can you hear me? This is a quite common question that I used to ask. Yeah, it's a very good question that Mr. Vaibhav Sarod asked. How can I restrict user to enter password which must contain one capital letter, one small, and one number? So that can be achieved by using a pattern. That is where pattern matching comes into your picture. You have to write a regular expression pattern. According to that pattern, you have to ensure whether the inputted information is matching that pattern. Vaibhav. So if you want, that regular expressions, I think we have explained. Then go back to that session, understand how to create a pattern. That pattern should, allow user to enter one capital letter, one small letter, one number. That you have to prepare your own pattern. Then once the user enters, and you have to match that entered information with the inputted in that particular pattern. If both of them are matching, allow them to submit or restrict them. That can be achieved by using regular expression. Yeah, please try to ask Nitika for yesterday's session. Nikita, sorry, Nikita. Only 2 to 3 members. I think data science person is not joined, I guess. See, CAPTCHA is for, checking whether the user is interacting with a web application or mission is interacting with the application. If CAPTCHA, for example, my dear friends, when we are working on web application, it is important question someone is asked. Okay, so we should check whether mission is interacting or human is interacting. Sometimes if the CAPTCHA is not there, what happens? Some hackers, they can even keep writing a code. That code can keep interacting the application. What happens? You see here when we are creating a Google account, if Google is not validating the user by CAPTCHA means, so there's some text or some information, so they are expecting from a user. Only a normal human being who will be able to see and give an input, he will be able to complete that CAPTCHA. The missions or the robots can't even read that particular data. In that way, and unwanted, and the missions can know unwanted information that is going to flow into your backend, that we can restrict. That is also one kind of validation rule that we must have to implement it. Jarjana Apurva. Sir, if we use pop-up function, can we able to delete more than one item at a time? If yes, how can we? Guys, more than item, if you wanted to delete it, and you have to write a logic. You have to select, all items. You have to put a checkbox, select every item, try to run a loop. However, you know how to delete one item, and similarly, you should also put a, that delete logic inside a loop to delete multiple items. In order to delete multiple items, you should know the IDs of multiple items. That can be programmatically, you have to check the IDs of each element by collecting them from a checkbox. Okay, Miglani, yes, Miglani, as it is a free crash course, what if you wanted to go for a complete course? Either you can reach out to your, administrator of ExcelR team. They will definitely, give you that information. Or you can also reach out to me, then I can also give you that information. So in order to implement a CAPTCHA, sir, Google CAPTCHA, there is a process that is out of this particular concept that you can even reach out to me, I will explain, because that is nowhere related to Angular. That is a different way of implementing CAPTCHA. A router link syntax, we have already yesterday implemented, Nikita. So if you ask me, since you are asking, let me go back to your router app, router link. Now here we are setting a configurations in a header component. In header component .html. See, this is our router link. Router link is an attribute, and we are giving a link. This is called as property binding. And Himawant, so they are asking about attendance link. Can you please share the attendance link?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And they are also asking us to upload the source code. Is there any possibility that I can get a drive link where I can even post this code? Himawant?
For drive link, we don't have a drive link, sir. For assignments, we have given a mail ID to the participants.
Then how are we going to give this source code, whatever the class that we completed so far? How can we give this source code to the people?
Yeah, we should once talk with these people, and we can update them, sir.
And also they are keep asking, about how are we going to reach why, because they do have some questions, I guess. And how are they going to reach a trainer?
No, now they are posting their doubts in the chat now, sir.
Yes, that is fine. In case maybe when they are working on examples. Is it possible for them to directly contact to me, or what is the process?
No, sir, I don't have idea on that, sir.
Okay. Yes, of course, you guys can even keep your skill set without a certification. Certification is not mandatory, my dear friends. Knowledge is very important than certification. There are few cases certification is mandatory. For front-end courses, certificate is not valid. Why? Because if you do certification for one version, tomorrow there will be another version. That's why don't even worry too much about certifications. Kindly gain the knowledge first. Guys, in case if you have any queries with respect to that session, right after the session, if you wanted to reach out to me, ask ExcelR team to share my details. They will try to share my details. Okay, next, guys, I think we are good to go with reactive form validation. Then let me go for reactive form validation. I have created one more component, that is registration component with the same UI. So here, guys, very simple, but reactive form validation, the validation rules that we are writing inside a component controller. Now you see here, reactive form validation, first step number one, we have to prepare a form. Now this component, register component, listen carefully. I have created a component. I have to display that component output in my UI. To do that, I am modifying, I am writing some routing techniques. Again, those who are new to the routing, please try to understand. I'm just writing one more, routing technique path. Here, guys, if it is a register, I'm going to call register component. I imported register component. Now this path, since we have already set, I am going to give that for end user to access in my header component where the links are there. Since the links, I am collecting it from my component. Now here I am going to add one more link here, register, link, register. So this is how I am setting. Once you made simple configuration, it will immediately now if you come back, you see here, let me go for register. Now on click of register, now Angular 8 reactive form validation example. Now if you go to the contact, this is template driven form example, register is giving reactive form validation. Okay, my dear friends. Now this will also, on click, the validation rules are working. Now on click of this register, however the validation, but these validations are taken care by reactive form validation. Guys, in order to do reactive form validation, the point number one, you must have to use first and foremost thing is you have to load reactive form validation into your app module. Step number one, you have to load this predefined module, which we have to pull it from forms, Angular forms, this reactive form validation, and we have to make an entry under imports. This is step number one. Step number two, wherever you are planning to do validation, now register form. Now see here, form builder, form group, and validators. So these three classes are very important to do reactive form validation. Now form builder is a class. See, this is going to create, it will try to allow you to build a complete form now, which has form controller, form group, and form array. All these guys are having. This is a kind of uh, allowing developer to build your form using reactive form validation. The form group, you can even group all the form elements into one single group. Validator is a class which has a predefined rules to set the validation. Like, however, in template-driven validation, we have used HTML5 validation controls. Whereas coming to this reactive form validation, we have to use validator controls from a validator class, not from a HTML5. Now, these three classes are mandatory. That also we are pulling it from form class. Next, guys, once you pull all the prerequisites, you are creating a form group. Register form. This is one of the group that we have created. Now, submitted is also this two. If you can see, these two guys are properties of my class. These two guys are properties of my class. Next, ng on init. And so ng on init is one of the lifecycle method. I'll try to explain about lifecycle methods little later. And we do have a lot of other lifecycle methods. Maybe moving forward, I'll try to explain about these methods as well. Now, here, since we have created one group, for that particular group, using a form builder class, we are grouping all the elements. Now see here, this title, first name, last name, email, password, confirm password, expect terms. This everyone are called as form controls. Now these form controls we have used inside my template, inside my register component HTML as a form control name. You see here, form control name. Whatever the value that you have given for form control name, and here the keys are remain same. You must have to use the same one. Next, this is a syntax. If it is empty, the required rule. And for email, required rule along with that email rule is also working. For a password, required rule and minimum length. And confirm password, required rule. Accept terms, required true. This is how all these rules required are min length or max length or email. This is properties which are there inside my validator class. Now to understand this validator class, you see here, this is already there in Angular core. This is there in Angular core. This has written from a forms from Angular. You see that it is there in Angular. That is where we should also rely on Angular modules. That's the node modules consist of all the modules which are really needed for us to work on Angular projects. Now, don't ever try to modify these node modules. That is a wrong idea. Now, next, the moment, for example, since we have created a group, all the controls we are grouping into a one particular variable. That is, in order to get all the fields. Now, get method is a predefined method. F is a form. Then we are giving one form. F represent the complete form, and all the controls that we are attaching back to your group, that is register form group. Then the moment when you submit using register form group, you will be able to get all the values. Now you see here how I am writing. When the form gets submitted, we are giving a group, the group name register form. That group we have created in line number 11 inside a component. Next, when the form submitted on submit, it is going for on submit, which is a predefined function. Now, sir, it is not predefined, it is user defined. I have created this function. Once the form is submitted, guys, listen, by default I made it as false. So next, here also same classes are being added internally by Angular. Now ng class we have used here. If it is invalid, if title has error, now is invalid will become false. If it is false, the error classes are going to add. Am I going fast? Now the way, if you keep comparing this template-driven validation and form validation, reactive form validation, all the reactive form validation rules that we have to take care inside component TS file. This is how. In case tomorrow if new elements is added into your form, that can be taken care, that can be added over here. Now the validation rules will also be taken care by validator class. So if you guys want this source code, I'll also upload in GitHub, and I'll give you the link maybe Friday. Okay guys, next you see here error messages. Now here there is no two-way data binding kind of concept, that ng model is not required. Ng model is required only when you are doing template driven validation. If it is a reactive form validation, now everything that we are collecting by giving a form control names. Now this form control names plays very important role. Whatever the value that you have given, based upon that value, it will automatically map. Since the automatical map is happening here. Next, to display the error messages, you see here, if it is submitted, by default is false. That is where in the line number 12, the submitted, I made it as false. If it is false, then f.title.errors. If it is a required error, let me display the required error. If it is required, let me display. When it comes to email, you see here, if it is required error, we are displaying required error message. If it is an email error, we are displaying email error. This is how the form validations taken care. Now guys, it is just a copy paste work in Angular to do a form validation. It is quite easy. If you know the complete concept, it is quite easy to do a validations in Angular. Similarly, if you wanted to do the same kind of validation in JavaScript, you may have to write too many lines of code. So this is how you will be able to validate by using two different ways in Angular, either template driven or reactive form validation. Okay. No questions? Okay, that's all about today's session. In case if you don't have any questions, let us conclude this session. And tomorrow I would like to explain about dependency injection, and I'll also explain about directives, and I'll also explain about some basics of services. Okay guys, thank you so much for your participation. See you tomorrow. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you. Bye bye. Hemant, can you please call me?
Yeah, okay, sir.